How did you deal with loss?
Faith. I'm Irish, I'm Catholic. The church has been a big part of my life.
Pierce Brosnan just made an announcement that nobody saw coming. At 71, the former James Bond is preparing for the worst. His first wife died of ovarian cancer at 43. Then his daughter died of the same disease at 41. Now, something has happened that's forcing him to face his deepest fear. The man who played the world's toughest spy is dealing with a battle he can't win, and what he's planning to do next has everyone worried. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland. He didn't come into the world with much, no wealth, no family legacy, and, as it turned out, no father. His dad, a carpenter named Thomas, disappeared so early in Pierce's life that he couldn't remember his face, voice, or even his presence. It was like he had vanished into thin air. His mother, May, was left to carry the weight. She worked as a nurse, holding together a life that had already begun to fall apart. In 1957, she made a painful choice. She left for London to find work, leaving 4-year-old Pierce behind in Ireland. She had no other option. Still, that decision created another hole in Pierce's young world. What was meant to be a short separation turned into 7 long years. During that time, he was passed around between relatives, first with his grandparents in Navan, then an uncle and aunt in Trim. Each new house came with new rules, new schools, and unfamiliar faces. Pierce never stayed long enough to belong. He learned to keep quiet, to observe, to survive. He was always the new kid, always the outsider. Teachers noticed something in him. He was bright but withdrawn, always looking out the window, never quite present. Then everything changed in 1964. At age 11, he moved to Greenock, Scotland. His mother had remarried. Her new husband, William Carmichael, worked in a factory. He was kind and patient. But for a boy who had grown up without consistency, this new home brought mixed emotions. Pierce felt torn. He was happy to see his mother again, but angry too. And now she had someone else, a new man in her life, a man who wasn't his father. Still, William tried. He taught Pierce small things, fishing, fixing things, how to trust again. He never pushed too hard. He never tried to replace anyone. One day, William took Pierce to the cinema. It was 1964, and the movie was Goldfinger. Sean Connery as James Bond lit up the screen. That night changed everything. Bond wasn't just a character to Pierce. He was the opposite of everything Pierce had felt. Bond was strong. Bond was confident. Bond was in control. And Pierce wanted to be just like that. By age 16, Pierce made another bold move. He dropped out of school in London and enrolled in St. Martin's School of Art. He didn't have money or a clear plan, just a passion for painting. He loved the work of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. Back then, acting wasn't even on his mind. His focus was illustration and design. He survived on toast and tea while his classmates came from wealthier homes. He was determined to prove he belonged. But fate had other plans. In 1971, while still studying art, Pierce stumbled into a theater workshop in South London. He saw a fire eater practicing his act. Instead of walking away, Pierce asked if he could try. That one spontaneous moment rewrote his future. The group noticed something in him, a mix of bravery and natural presence. They invited him to join. He had never acted before, but now everything started to click. Just like Bond, he had entered a world of risk and charm. Soon after, Pierce joined the Drama Centre London. For 3 years, from 1973 to 1976, he trained harder than ever before. The school was intense. More than 60% of students dropped out. The teachers were tough. They broke students down to rebuild them. Some quit. Some had breakdowns. But Pierce pushed through. He worked side jobs. He studied Shakespeare. He even trained in mime and circus acts. It cost £1,200 a year, a fortune back then. Pierce never gave up. In 1976, he got his first real break, a stage play called Wait Until Dark. It was a thriller, and Pierce played a character that made people uncomfortable. The director saw something cold in him, something unsettling. That edge worked. A year later, he took on a bold role in a difficult Tennessee Williams play, The Red Devil Battery Sign. The play had flopped in America, but Pierce brought it to life in London. Critics praised his performance. Suddenly, people were noticing. He moved to film next. In 1980, he had a blink-and-you-miss-it role in The Mirror Cracked alongside Elizabeth Taylor. He was on screen for less than 30 seconds and earned just £50, but it was a start. That same year, he appeared in The Long Good Friday with Helen Mirren and Bob Hoskins. He played a minor IRA character. The movie wasn't a hit right away, but over time it became a cult classic, and there Pierce was, quietly building his path to stardom. In 1982, Pierce Brosnan was barely known outside of the UK. He had done some British TV and theatre work, but nothing major. Then something unexpected happened. He auditioned for a small role on a new show called Remington Steele, not as the lead, but as a murder victim. That could have been it, one scene and done. But NBC's casting director saw something in him. They saw charm, screen presence, something magnetic. So they called him back, not for a minor part, but for the lead role. That decision changed everything. The original plan for Remington Steele was a seasoned American con man in his 50s. Brosnan was 29, young, Irish, and unknown in the United States. Still, the producers took a gamble. Over 200 actors auditioned, many of them well-known Americans. Brosnan got the role. His Irish accent almost cost him the part. Executives feared American viewers wouldn't accept a foreign lead. But once he stepped into the role, he was Remington Steele, cool, smooth, mysterious. At its peak, Remington Steele was making NBC over $50 million a year just from advertising. International sales added another $200 million. The show aired in more than 80 countries. And something strange happened in America. Between 1983 and 1987, applications for private detective licenses jumped by 340%. Brosnan's cool, clever character had clearly struck a nerve. But success came with a price. Only 2 months after the show started airing, critics were already saying Brosnan should be the next James Bond. In January 1983, Entertainment Weekly called him the most Bond-like actor since Sean Connery. Just a few months later, Bond producer Albert Cubby Broccoli reached out. He was watching, and he was interested. By 1984, the speculation exploded. NBC leaned into it. Their marketing hinted at Brosnan's secret agent vibe. TV Guide ran a cover with him, asking, "The next 007?" Even Ian Fleming's widow, Anne Fleming, publicly said that Brosnan looked and acted exactly like what her husband had envisioned for Bond. At the same time, Brosnan was getting serious critical recognition. That same year, he was nominated for a Golden Globe for his role in Nancy Astor. It was only his second major TV role. He was up against legends, Anthony Hopkins, John Gielgud. Still, Brosnan nearly won. Industry insiders said he lost by just 3 votes. His performance impressed even the real Astor family, who had originally opposed the series. His Bond journey, though, wasn't going to be simple. Most people think he was first offered Bond in 1985, not true. He was actually considered for the role in 1983. For A View to a Kill, Roger Moore was unsure about doing another film, and Brosnan was on deck. He'd met Broccoli on the set of For Your Eyes Only, where Brosnan's wife, Cassandra Harris, had a small role. Broccoli took one look at him and said, "If he can act, he's my guy." But the studio panicked. They offered Moore a huge payday, over $3.5 million, to return. So Brosnan's shot was delayed again. Then in 1986, something even worse happened. Remington Steele had been cancelled, but when word got out that Brosnan might be the next Bond, the show's ratings surged. NBC saw a chance. They reversed the cancellation and ordered a short 5th season. Brosnan was still under contract. That meant he couldn't film Bond. It was brutal. The attention he got from being linked to Bond was used against him. He was stuck, and while he finished the final season of Remington Steele, Bond producers moved on. Timothy Dalton got the role. That moment changed everything for Brosnan and for Bond. Dalton was Brosnan's friend. Losing the role hurt, but he had to smile through it. Dalton's version of Bond was darker, grittier. It didn't go well. License to Kill flopped in the United States, making just $34 million. Brosnan watched from the sidelines. He knew he could have brought something different. Between 1986 and 1994, what fans call the lost years, Brosnan didn't disappear. He made smart choices. In The Fourth Protocol, 1987, he played a British spy in a Cold War thriller. It wasn't Bond, but it was close. He starred in Nomads, 1986, showing his range in a supernatural role. He even did Diet Coke commercials, where he played a smooth, tuxedoed hero, a not-so-subtle nod to Bond. Pierce Brosnan met Cassandra Harris in the late 1970s. She was already a working actress, born Sandra Colleen Waits in Sydney in 1948. When they met, the spark was instant. Pierce didn't plan on falling in love, he just thought she was beautiful. But something happened. Soon they were living together in Wimbledon. On December 27, 1980, they got married. Cassandra had just gone through a rough divorce, so this new chapter meant everything to her. She had 2 kids from that marriage, Charlotte and Christopher. Pierce didn't hesitate. He stepped into their lives like he'd always belonged. When Cassandra's ex-husband, Dermot Harris, died of a heart attack in 1986, Pierce legally adopted the children. They took his name, but it was more than paperwork. Pierce didn't grow up with a father himself, so he poured everything into being the dad he never had. He once said, "I wasn't a father, I was just Pierce, and then I became daddy." In 1983, Cassandra and Pierce had a son together. They named him Sean. That made them 5. Life felt full and warm. The kids got along, and Pierce's career was picking up, but family came first. He wanted to give them the kind of love he never got growing up. He made sure they felt safe, happy, and seen. In 1987, everything changed. While Pierce was filming The Deceivers in India, Cassandra started feeling really sick. They flew back to London. The news was terrible. She had ovarian cancer. Not just a small lump or something easy to treat, it was everywhere. The diagnosis hit like a truck. Pierce said, "From day one we had a fight on our hands." What followed were 4 brutal years. Cassandra went through 8 surgeries. She had a year and a half of chemotherapy. Her hair fell out. Her body weakened. But she stayed strong. She questioned every treatment. She made her own decisions. She faced it all with courage. Pierce stood by her the whole time. He called himself the quiet party, always present but often helpless. Their son Sean, just a little boy, would sometimes pretend to be the doctor. It was heartbreaking. Cassandra's mother had died of the same cancer. It wasn't just bad luck, it was genetic. That made everything even worse. Now they had to worry about Charlotte too. Pierce became an advocate for early testing and awareness. It was too late for Cassandra, but he wanted to help others. In December 1991, her time ran out. One night as they lay in bed, Pierce full of grief, Cassandra whispered, "Please darling, don't worry, it's just a life winding down." She was still the strong one, even at the end. She didn't want machines or hospitals, she wanted dignity. She faced death on her terms. She died on December 28, 1991. She was only 43. Pierce and her son Christopher were with her. Charlotte, who was away in London studying acting, was on the phone. Christmas had just passed. While others were celebrating, Pierce was planning a funeral. And then came the hardest part, telling 8-year-old Sean that his mother was gone. Pierce suddenly had to raise 3 kids alone. Sean was 8, Christopher was 19, and Charlotte was 20. He said it was the first time he had felt real grief. It overwhelmed him, but he kept going. He said Cassandra made him who he was. "She's forever in every fiber of my being," he later said. Pierce Brosnan was finally cast as James Bond in 1994. What made it even more personal was his wife, Cassandra Harris. She had been a Bond girl herself in For Your Eyes Only back in 1981. She had cancer by then and pushed him to go for the role again. She wanted to see him become 007 before she passed. So when he finally got it, it wasn't just a victory, it was heartbreak and triumph all rolled into one. His debut in GoldenEye was a make-or-break moment, not just for him but for the whole Bond franchise. The film had already burned through directors, and its budget had jumped to $60 million. MGM was nearly bankrupt. If it failed, Bond would have ended right there. But GoldenEye made $353 million worldwide. That tank chase scene through St. Petersburg alone cost $8 million. Brosnan did 90% of his own stunts, including a terrifying bungee jump off a 220-meter dam in Switzerland. It was so dangerous insurance companies refused to cover it. The film was released exactly 30 years after Sean Connery's final official Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever. It wasn't just another movie, it was a resurrection, and it worked. Then came Die Another Day in 2002. It celebrated Bond's 40th anniversary and nearly killed Brosnan. A parasailing stunt went wrong and he got pulled underwater by 30-foot waves. He ended up in the hospital with hypothermia. That same movie featured a $300,000 invisible Aston Martin and a massive ice palace set in Iceland made with 1,000 tons of ice. But Brosnan wasn't just box office gold. He won the Saturn Award for Best Actor in 1996. What made it wild was that he beat Sean Connery, who was nominated the same year for The Rock. It was the first time a current Bond outshined a former one. Even Steven Spielberg called Brosnan after GoldenEye to offer him the role of Indiana Jones. Brosnan turned it down to stay loyal to Bond. That decision likely cost him $50 million, but it showed how committed he was to the role. Everything seemed perfect, then came 2004. He was in the Bahamas filming After the Sunset. Life was good. He'd done 4 Bond films that earned $1.4 billion. He was in great shape, training, pitching ideas for Bond 21. Then, at 2:47 p.m., his phone rang. The producers cut him loose, no warning, no explanation. The call lasted 47 seconds. "You are a great James Bond. Thank you very much. Goodbye." That was it. What made it colder was how well his films had performed. Die Another Day had made $431.9 million, the most ever for a Bond movie at the time. But producers had already decided they wanted a younger Bond. They waited until he was alone and vulnerable to deliver the blow. In just 3 days, everything changed. 3 movie deals disappeared. Studios backed out. Internal emails later showed he was seen as too Bond and hard to cast in anything else. His asking price dropped from $12 million to $3 million. He had to let go of 12 staff members. He went into a deep depression. His kids saw him cry. When the Casino Royale trailer came out, that moment hit him hard. His role had been handed off without even a goodbye. Turns out, the producers had been screen testing other actors for 2 years while pretending they still believed in him. That betrayal stung more than the firing itself. But there was something else happening. Back in 1994, just a few months before he officially became Bond, something unexpected happened. On April 8, 7:30 p.m., at a beach party in Cabo San Lucas, he met Keely Shaye Smith. She was a journalist, and they clicked right away. She wasn't impressed by the fame. She liked who he was, not what he did. They talked until 2 a.m. He flew her to meet his kids within 3 weeks. She moved in 6 months later. Their connection was real. And years later, that relationship became the one thing he could count on when everything else fell apart. In 2001, they got married in Ireland. The ceremony cost $2.3 million. It was held at Ballintubber Abbey, a church that had been running for almost 800 years. The guest list was tight, just 100 people, including Judi Dench and Liam Neeson. Brosnan wore a traditional Irish kilt. He cried when he saw Keely walk down the aisle. Charlotte Brosnan was only 41 when she died in 2013. But her death wasn't just a tragedy, it was the third time this exact nightmare played out in the same family. Her grandmother had died of ovarian cancer. So had her mother, Cassandra Harris, at just 43. And now Charlotte. She was 2 years younger than her mother when the disease took her life. Charlotte had fought hard for 3 years. She battled the cancer that quietly grew inside her. Ovarian cancer is called the silent killer for a reason. By the time it's found, it's often too late. In fact, 75% of women are only diagnosed in the late stages, where the chances of survival drop from 90% to as low as 20 to 30%. Charlotte was born in 1971. She lost her biological father, Dermot Harris, and was adopted by Pierce Brosnan in 1986. He gave her his name, his love, and a place in his heart. But no amount of love could stop the genetic curse that had already stolen 2 generations. For Pierce, it wasn't just about losing his daughter. It was about watching history repeat itself in the worst way possible. Back in 1991, he lost his wife Cassandra to the same disease. She went through 8 surgeries and 18 months of chemo. He called it life-changing. Watching someone you love fade away like that, piece by piece, it rewires your entire world. He said, "You're dealing with death. Everything changes." Then, 22 years later, the same thing happened to Charlotte. At the 2014 Stand Up to Cancer fundraiser, Pierce stood on stage and poured his heart out. He said, "I held the generous, strong, beautiful hand of my first wife Cassie as ovarian cancer took her life much too soon. And just last year, I held the hand of my funny, wonderful daughter Charlotte before she too died from this wretched inherited disease." It wasn't just fresh grief, it was trauma all over again, deep, dark, and familiar. One of Pierce's closest friends, Bron Royance, said it best, "Charlotte's illness came with a darkness." Pierce was reliving the whole nightmare. She was surrounded by Alex, her 2 children, 15-year-old Isabella and 8-year-old Lucas, and her brothers, Christopher and Sean. She had been born in London, studied acting there, and that's where her life ended. Pierce released a short statement after she died. Charlotte fought her cancer with grace and humanity, courage and dignity. Her strength was astonishing. Even in her final weeks, she arranged her wedding. She wanted her children to see that love still mattered. Her daughter Isabella was 15 when she lost her mother, just like Charlotte had been when Cassandra was diagnosed. Lucas was 8, the same age Pierce's son Sean had been when his mother died. The echo of history was almost too precise, too cruel. Friends said Charlotte was the kind of mother who put everything into her kids. Her friend Claire Beckwith remembered her saying she didn't care about acting anymore. "This is my family," she said. "I want to give them all the love I can." And just like that, Alex Smith went from newlywed to widower in 2 weeks. Now, he had to raise 2 children who had just watched their mother disappear. Pierce, now a grandfather, stepped in, grieving all over again, but also trying to be strong for the ones left behind. But not all of Charlotte's siblings found a way to cope. Christopher Brosnan fell hard after Cassandra's death in 1991. He was only 19. He had promise and worked on Pierce's Bond films like Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough. But the pain caught up with him. By 1996, he was fined £1,000 for drunk driving. A year later, he went to jail for 3 months for doing it again. Then came drugs, GHB, heroin. He collapsed outside a London club and slipped into a coma. In 2012, at age 32, he was arrested again, this time for heroin possession. He'd become part of the Brixton drug scene, a long way from Hollywood, a long way from who he used to be. In June 2024, Christopher made his first public appearance in 20 years. Paparazzi spotted him outside a grocery store in London, gaunt, alone, 51 years old. Meanwhile, Keely Shaye Smith had been fighting her own battle for years. The tabloids mocked her weight. They showed before and after pictures comparing her young body with how she looked after motherhood. Trolls flooded the internet. Pierce wasn't having it. He defended her in a now-famous post, "I love every curve of her body. She is the most beautiful woman in my eyes. And also because she had our 5 children." Keely, now 61, dropped 100 pounds in 2024, no surgery, no shortcuts. Just walking, swimming, whole foods, and patience. Most of all, self-respect and gratitude. She wrote online, "For all my body has given and accomplished in 60 years. In August 2024, she and Pierce celebrated 23 years of marriage, 31 years since they met. Through tragedy, scandal, and grief, they stayed strong. At their anniversary, Pierce called her his North, South, East, and West. Keely replied, "You are the finest, loveliest, tenderest person I have ever known." They were just seen supporting George Clooney's Broadway debut in April 2025, Keely in a black lace dress, Pierce still charming, still steady. Despite everything, he keeps working. He was cast as Dr. Fate in Black Adam in 2022.